Jesus had come up to Jerusalem for the Passover, in the year we know as AD 30. Some suggest AD 32 or 33. And on the way in, he had deliberately sent his disciples to fetch a donkey, and he rode that donkey into Jerusalem, deliberately to fulfill the prophecy of Zechariah 9:9. Your king is coming, riding on a donkey, the colt of a donkey. It was in fact a donkey which no one had ever ridden before, and the crowds threw their garments on the donkey for Jesus to sit on, others threw their garments on the road, and others cut branches off the palm trees for the donkey to walk over. To fulfill the ancient image of the king riding on a donkey, Jesus claims to be the King of the Jews. And it's not a claim that is ignored. The whole crowd rejoices. Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the kingdom of our father David. There were many grand phrases as the people rejoiced. The Messiah had come. The Messiah had been promised by Isaiah and many of the other Old Testament prophets as coming, and the declaration was that he would rule the world. The final state of the world will be a kingdom where the Messiah of Israel rules over the whole world. The Jews were sick of being dominated by others. For the last 600 years, since the Babylonians had overthrown Jerusalem, they had been ruled by the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, and now the Romans. But the Jewish people had carefully maintained the genealogy of the royal family, and the heir to the throne of David was in fact Jesus at this time. Although the royal family had not lived as a royal family, so they greatly anticipated the time when the kingdom would be established. Jesus came into Jerusalem and came to the temple and looked around, but it was late in the day, and he went back out up the Mount of Olives to Bethany with the 12, where he spent the evening. Now the next day, when they had come out from Bethany, he was hungry. And seeing from afar a fig tree having leaves, he went to see if perhaps he could find something on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. In response, Jesus said to it, Let no one eat fruit from you ever again. And his disciples heard it. So they came to Jerusalem. Then Jesus went into the temple and began to drive out those who bought and sold in the temple, and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he would not allow anyone to carry wares through the temple. Then he taught, saying, Is it not written, My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of thieves. And the scribes and the chief priests heard it, and sought how they might destroy him, for they feared him, because all the people were astonished at his teaching. When evening had come, he went out of the city. Now in the morning, as he passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. And Peter, remembering, said to them, Rabbi, look, the fig tree which you cursed has withered away. So Jesus answered and said to them, Have faith in God. For assuredly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, Be removed and cast into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that those things he says will be done, he will have whatever he says. Therefore I say to you, whatever things you ask when you pray, believe that you receive them, and you will have them. And whenever you stand praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive him, that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your trespasses. For if you do not forgive, neither will your Father in heaven forgive your trespasses. My name's Arthur, and I thank you for joining me as we share these verses together. Mark chapter 11, and we've read verses 12 to 26. The triumphal entry into Jerusalem would have been on Sunday the 10th of Nisan. So this is the next day, what we call Monday, the 11th of Nisan, the first month of the Jewish lunar calendar. And he's coming into Jerusalem early and sees a fig tree in the distance and comes to the fig tree to see if there's any fruit on it. We're told he's hungry, so he'd had an early start and hadn't eaten breakfast yet. If you know the biology of a fig tree, like many fruit trees, before it produces leaves, it produces fruit buds. On many fruit trees, the blossoms come out before the leaves appear. And so you would expect, if there were leaves, that there would be at least buds of fruit, even though there may not be fully developed fruit. But this fig tree had lots of leaves, but not even a bud of a fruit. Mark comments that it was not the season for figs. This tree was evidently a little bit early in producing its leaves, but it missed out on producing fruit. And so Jesus says to it, "Let no one eat fruit from you ever again." The disciples were a little bit surprised to hear Jesus speaking to a fig tree. But they thought no more of it, because life is pretty busy with Jesus around. And when they come into the temple, he immediately begins to drive out those who bought and sold in the temple, and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. What's going on here? Well, we're heading up to Passover. The requirement for Passover is that people sacrifice a lamb. But not any old lamb, it had to be a perfect lamb. It will be killed on the Thursday, on the 14th of Nisan, for them to eat the Passover meal that night. This lamb has to be perfect, and so the priests take on the responsibility of examining the lambs. Now, it was possible for people to bring their own lamb, but if they did so, it is not unlikely that the priest would have found fault with the ones that they brought. In any case, most of the pilgrims came without a lamb, knowing that they could buy one at the temple. And so this was the first action that was going on. People buying their sacrificial lambs that had already been certified by the priests. The high priest was concerned to make money out of this little exercise, and since the demand was high at this time, the price was high also. But he had another scheme. He also insisted that people use temple money rather than Roman money to buy the lamb, and so there were money changers there. People had Roman money because that was what commerce was done in, but at the temple they had temple money, and so there were money changers there, changing the Roman money into the Jewish money, so that the people could buy their sacrifices. And of course the poor people, well, they couldn't afford the lamb, but they would buy a dove to offer as a sacrifice to the Lord. Now, this was a very busy day, because this was the time when people had to select their lambs and make sure they had a lamb to sacrifice when the Thursday came, the 14th of Nisan came. But furthermore, as well as disrupting all of this business, Jesus wouldn't allow people to use the temple as a shortcut carrying goods. The place was full of pilgrims. They were all getting organised and carrying stuff here, there and everywhere. But he was saying, "This is Bedlam. My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations." It's meant to be a quiet and respectful place. But you have made it a den of thieves. It was noisy, and people were being exploited. And so Jesus would not allow anyone to carry goods through the temple. The scribes and the chief priests, when they saw and heard what Jesus was doing, they were very annoyed. How could they stop this man disrupting their business? They didn't know how, because the people were astonished at his teaching, and he maintained this vigil all day. But in the evening he went out of the city. The scribes and chief priests were very annoyed with him.